Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another Pucks with Haggs podcast powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe is the 123rd episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. We are going to have with us today the Athletics' Fluto Shinzawa, a longtime colleague of mine, good guy, hockey dad. Always interested to talk about the Bruins and anything hockey related. And you know what time it is also is Steve Conroy time, because I see him there. What's up, Steve? All right, we got everybody here. I know you were watching the rookie game, Steve. So why don't you, any impressions that you had just from watching that game now that it has just concluded?
Not a ton. Riley Duran looks like a pretty good player.
Yep.
He went hard to the net. He's gonna, stick around, I think, in camp for a little while anyway.
Yep.
He's got a little moxie. It's what they're looking for. I don't know if he's gonna make the team or not this year, but he's gonna be around for a bit. Brett Harrison made a beautiful pass to John Farinacci for a goal. Jackson Edward looks like he's got a little bite to him.
Yep.
That's about it.
Yeah, I would say the D in general looked a little rough at times. It was 6-3 final, I think.
Yes.
I saw Mast and Brunet were out there in their zone quite a bit during the game, just watching the defensemen.
Harrison, it's hard to pick up the numbers, to be honest with you, on the live stream.
It is a little tough. And Harrison actually had a nice goal too. He just drove it straight to the net and just slammed it past the goal. He just drove it straight to the.
I think that was the Duran goal, wasn't it?
I think they gave it to Harrison. I'm pretty sure it was Harrison. I don't know if it was Duran. It was a nice goal, but I thought it was Harrison.
Yeah, I think that was the Duran goal.
Either way, whichever one it was, Duran or Harrison, they just decided they were going straight to the net, crashed it, and basically forced the puck in. So they looked good. I thought both of them, Riley Duran, Farinacci, I thought looks like an excellent player. But really, those are the kind of guys you would expect that have gotten some AHL time and are a little bit older that should sort of shine in that setting. So we'll see as things go on. But as we're talking about the prospects, Fluto, I wonder your thoughts on Riley Duran and sort of, what chances he might have, or, what the Bruins think of him from a management perspective. I agree with Steve. I think if he does ever get NHL time, it's going to be bottom six, third, fourth line. I'm sure that's where he'll get a lot of the reps in training camp if they do give him an extended look. But where you think he might sort of fit into this Bruins picture?
Future fourth line right wing. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially given the player's pedigree. Not much of a scorer at school at Providence, but definitely one of those guys that, maybe the pro style is just going to be more conducive to his game, just where it's north-south. He doesn't of course you want everybody to score, but that's not going to be his job. If he makes it full time, he's going to be killing penalties, maybe taking some faceoffs, playing physical, energy. So what is that? Is that 4 goals, 8 assists at some point? And whatever, that's fine if you're playing 9, 10, 11 minutes a game. So in that way, that's a good pro, a solid fourth line guy. And he will be cheap is also one thing. So if you can fill out that fourth line with these kinds of entry level minimum salary guys, you're in good shape, because you got to balance that out with the high ticket items. He needs work, I'm sure. Just get some good pro reps in Providence as a full-time first-year pro. You see 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys get hurt up top, you might see him.
Yeah, I think Peter Chiarelli used to call that backfilling his roster with some of those young players after the cheap guy, entry-level contract guys, after you signed your big ticket guys that take up the bulk of the salary cap. There's no question about it. Duran's going to be interesting to watch. I also think he's a guy, and I think Mujanel's talked about this a little bit, who I think is going to translate into the pro game maybe even better than he did the college game, just because he is a very smart player. I think when you put him with other high IQ players around him, it makes him better too. And just the fact that he's 6'2", over 200 pounds, he's got ideal NHL size. Like, there's a lot of things. He's a smart kid. He's got a little bit more skill than you think he does if he's going to play that role. So he will occasionally, as you mentioned, put in a goal or an assist here or there. Not a big scorer by any means, but he, at least when he has a good offensive chance, can take advantage of it. Anybody else, Fluto, in this rookie camp that you're curious about, that you do maybe want to get a little bit of a look at, that you think might be able to go into regular training camp and be sort of a dark horse guy to watch?
No, not among this current game group. And it was explained regarding some of the other higher prospects like Lysell and Merkulov, who have played in this tournament. Well, they want them on equal ground with the big boys come that first on ice day when main camp opens. So if any of these kids sticks around for a while, I think that will be a huge surprise. But it's just not that kind of roster right now.
No, most definitely. I do think there may be a player or two on here that we will see at some point in Boston over the season, whether it's maybe Farinacci, maybe Duran. There's a couple of guys that if there's injuries or something happens, I certainly think could, log a little bit of NHL time. But there's no question. I think all eyes as far as the Bruins prospects go and the guys that will really seriously compete for a job in camp, Lysell is the biggest guy that you look at. And I know you wrote about it in The Athletic the other day, Fluto, and it's true. I think a lot of the signs point towards the Bruins kind of wanting him to win that job, or at least putting him in the best position possible to potentially win that job with Coyle and Marchand as a second-line right winger, because let's face it, there's not a ton of guys in the Bruins system prospect-wise that could effectively replace Jake DeBrusk's offense, his game-breaking ability, a lot of the stuff that he brings to the table that kind of Lysell has in his toolkit. So it's going to be interesting to watch him in regular camp. Let's move on to another topic. Ryan Johnston, named the new radio play-by-play voice of the Boston Bruins. Long-term personality on 98.5, fill-in guy, has filled in as a radio play-by-play guy from time to time in the past. Steve, I would say Ryan Johnston's a guy that's absolutely paid his dues over the years. This was a long time coming for him. He's proven he can do the job. He has paid his dues in every way possible, from being an AHL play-by-play guy to like hanging around and sort of waiting for one of these jobs to open up for him. So it was really good to see as Judd Surratt goes to Nesson and replaces Jack Edwards as the TV play-by-play guy, that Johnston is now going to get the job that I think a lot of people were hoping he was going to get as the radio guy.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's covered games. The Lowell Lock Monsters, the dearly departed Lowell Lock Monsters. He was the play-by-play guy for. I
think he and Boychuk were there at the same time, if I remember correctly.
Were they? Yeah.
Yes.
He's done the job. He's been banging on the door. I know I don't know Ryan very well. I met him a few years ago when he was filling in for. It might have been Ghosh. I'm not sure. Maybe maybe it was Jack. But he did fill in for somebody, and he's obviously can do the job. So good for him. He's, like you say, he's paid his dues, and it's good to see somebody's dream come true.
Yeah, it's always good to welcome somebody else to the Bruins media party, right, Fluto? Somebody we can hang out with at morning skate and see during the games. And I think Ryan's been around so much, he's going to fit in seamlessly with everybody else.
And these guys, these radio guys, they all work hard. Like that's, there's no way, right? You look at the speed and how far, like some of these arenas, Joe, like I think about like Pittsburgh and New Jersey, you are 30,000 feet up, and how these
New Jersey
guys
especially, absolutely
can keep track of not only the Bruins but the opponents. That's a lot of work, and to have all those numbers and stories and stats and everything right at the top of the line, that's a very, very hard job. So good luck to Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could never do the job, to be honest with you. Like I've got to look at the replay 3 times to make sure I've got the goal right.
And hockey is the toughest one to do, I think, because it is so fast paced, and you can really fall behind the action really quickly. And to your point, Fluto, there's older places like San Jose that always had the media like way up high by the ceiling rafters, and now there's when the new buildings are built, like what happened with New Jersey, they always kick the media, the TV, the radio, the writers like to this like deep far corner of the building now, so you're super far away from the ice and everything that's going on. So it does make it even more difficult to do that job. So. Good luck to Ryan. I think, he's a guy that has been around a long time. I think he's really coveted this job, and he's kind of hoped someday that this would be his. And I love somebody that's that determined to see their dream come true and to be able to get their dream job, to just hang in there, pay their dues, and then it finally they earn it and they get it. So congrats to 98.5 for picking the right guy, and congrats to Ryan for getting the gig. Boston Bruins Foundation, the sort of unofficial start of the hockey season, kicked off in Plymouth on Thursday. We were all down there to talk to Jim Montgomery, a few of the players. One guy that was absent, Jeremy Swayman, not there, not signed, not at the golf tournament. Jim Montgomery, I think, now officially has the gag order to not talk about contracts and to talk about Swayman. When we asked him about it, he kind of said that's somebody else's job to talk about that, and sort of passed on the question. So we've kind of hit that point where, training camp's around the corner. He's not signed, and I think things are going to start getting a little more tense. Fluto, your thoughts on Swayman, where the two sides potentially are as we hit a natural deadline of training camp in the beginning of it, where I think everybody hoped he was going to be signed and be ready to go at the start. But your sense of kind of where we are at this point, and if we could be in for a few tense moments before he finally does get delivered, because I think at the end of the day, everybody knows Swayman loves the Bruins. He loves Boston. I think he wants to sign. The Bruins absolutely covet him and want him, but I'm not sure that they're close enough to feel like a deal is right around the corner.
I wouldn't be surprised if this goes into camp and he's not signed. I think we've come to know Jeremy as someone who's very sure of himself, very confident, very secure in what he's done and what he can be. I think that's the most important thing. Is everything points to, okay, this guy is going to be pretty good. But that said, has literally never been a number one regular season goalie. So if you're a club, you can point to that all day and say, okay, you can say you're worth whatever. I know Sportsnet had him around 9.5 around McAvoy money. Well, there's no comparable there aside from Vasilevsky. And he had already had, I think it was two years of number one regular season performance.
And I think he'd won a Vezina by that point too, right? I think everybody that's in that 9.5, 10 range has won a Vezina before they've gotten that kind of money too. Like that, you've already achieved greatness and been a number one goalie when you get that kind of money.
It's just bad timing for Jeremy. Let's say this situation is 2 years down the road from now. Okay, then he gets paid. But now with the way the comp system works, it's just, I don't see it happening in terms of a real big number for him. And then if you say, okay, maybe my turn is going to be coming up with the next contract. Well, I'm sure the organization doesn't want to sign him for short term either. So that's where I think it is tricky. It's a tricky thing, and that's why I think this is taking time to resolve. It's just two completely different viewpoints, and you understand and respect both. But it's going to come down to the pressure of missing time. I think that's going to goose this one forward.
Yeah, most definitely. And Fluto, I think the reason that we hear he wants McAvoy money so much, and you hear McAvoy mentioned in the $9.5 million, is because there is no goalie he can say, I want that money, and not look like he's really reaching for something. There's no comparable goalie to where he is, where he can say, I want Vasilevsky money. Because if he says that, people are going to look at him like, you've never been a number one, you've never won a Vezina. Like, what have you done that Vasilevsky did before he signed that contract where you should be getting, that kind of money? And I guess that's why you hear them saying he wants the McAvoy deal. But you can't, that's not how negotiations work. You can't say, I want this defenseman's money when you're a goalie. That's just not how these negotiations work. Steve, your sense of where things are right now, Swayman's worth, and kind of where we sit as, training camp is next week, and things I think are going to start, hitting ahead here.
Yeah, I think the spitting chicklets guys had a Bruins offer, kind of a bridge offer, 4 years of 6.2. And if that was an 8-year deal, that would be lowball. But considering this would drop him off into UFA land when he was 29 years old, I think that would be not a bad compromise. You know, like Fluto says, he's in that weird spot where, you know, I think everybody knows he's going to be a good number one goalie, maybe even a great one. Who knows? We'll see. But he's going to be good. But he hasn't proven it yet. You know, he's the most games he's played is 44 games last year, and you do have to see it. He's, you know, but I do think that the Bruins will have to, you know, take a leap of faith, you know, in some nature, but. Yeah, it's, you know, I have confidence in the kid that he's going to be really good. You know, I don't know if you guys saw the comments from Drew Camesso yesterday. He worked out with Swayman in the off season, you know, here and there, and he just absolutely raved about his focus. You know, they would work out at BC at 6:45 a.m. and he was just amazed at how focused he was, how prepared he was when he showed up at the rink every day. I have very little doubt that this guy is going to be a really good goalie. So, you know, where they land, I don't know, but the Bruins have a good goalie. How much they're willing to pay for it, you know, we'll see.
Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than in 2 to 6 player stat projections and you watch the winnings roll right in. Right now, you can take advantage of Caitlin Clark, racking up triple doubles and dropping dimes in every game she's playing, or hop on the Jaron Duran train as he's posting big offensive numbers in just about every statistical category imaginable. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Yeah, and like the what you're talking about, Steve, the work that Swayman has put in, that is part of the reason he believes that he's worth the money that he's asking for. And I agree on that level. He has earned it and deserves it because of the work that he's put in. He just hasn't translated into him being able to do it on the ice. And a lot of that has to do with Allmark being here and, you know, him having been forced to split time with him as he was developing over the last 3 or 4 years. But like last year, he spent every day during the summer, pretty much weekday anyway, at Warrior most days. And he was working out at an elite level and wanted to be at that level. And I think he put in the work to get to that level. And he played that way last year. It was, you know, a breakout year in a lot of ways for him last year with his playoff performance, with, you know, him being an all-star. But, you know, you always go back to he hasn't played more than 44 games. He hasn't had that full number one workload, that mental and physical test of him being able to maintain performance, even when everything is on his shoulders and he doesn't have a guy that won a Vezina trophy as his partner, you know, next to him. That's like a whole different level. Once you get to that point. But like, I understand why he's like determined to get that money because he has the last few years put in the work. And I thought the first time I saw him in training camp when he first came in, I just noticed him as a goalie. And when I'm watching the goalies and drills in training camp, I'm usually not noticing anything about them. They all seem interchangeable to me. Fluto, maybe you can tell them apart a lot more because you watch a lot more goaltending because you have, you know, 2 boys that are goalies and you can see like major differences. But for me, like his technique, his athleticism, like all the stuff he brought to the table, I think it really made him stand out. And at that point, you said the Bruins are onto something here. And I think you continue to believe that as he's continued to perform. And like, I don't think the bridge deal thing is the worst idea in the world. Yes, the Bruins are probably going to have to end up paying like even more if they go 3 or 4 years on a contract and he's a UFA at the end of all that and he performs well. Like it's going to hurt them on the back end if they go that route. But I think, you know, let's say they up it to like 4 years and $7 million a year, like 28 somewhere in there. I think that something like that, I feel like should be able to satisfy both sides where he's making really good money and he's probably setting the bar for guys in his position where, you know, the comparables to him are now going to be making a lot more money because he got that contract and he's setting himself up for as long as he's betting on himself and he's performing. he's going to get major money, at the end of the 4 years on the other side of the rainbow. Fluto, do you think a bridge deal is something that we do end up seeing in this case? Because like you said, and I think we all agree, this is a tough negotiation. Like there's a lot of ins and outs here, and it's not perfect timing for either side. And I think they're going to have to come up with something a little more unique to come to an agreement when push comes to shove.
Yes, I think it's where do these things usually end up? Somewhere in the middle, because he's not going to get 8-year term. It's just not the right time, and it's not going to be a short-term deal just because that wouldn't make much sense either. So yeah, probably 4 or 5 years. Yeah, 7. That's probably that's I'm sure that's more than the Bruins would want to pay in terms of the market, but you're going to have to, just because. Okay, we can sit here all you want, and I'm going to say that when he gets signed, I think there's going to be a dip in performance early from Jeremy, just because it was such an ideal situation for him these last 3 years to not have the physical and mental stress of having Linus go every other night. I think that was so good for both of them. I think we'll see the same thing with Linus up there. I don't think he'll be as good early as these, but once they get used to being more number one, I think they'll settle in. But I think it's going to take time for Jeremy at the start once he's signed. But yeah, ultimately, compromise from both, and that's how usually these things get done, especially when there's so few comps on the market.
Another thing, when you're projecting down the road, the Bruins have put together what could be a very, very good defense core as long as it comes together. That will translate into really good numbers for Jeremy Swayman eventually. So there's something, if he plays behind this decor for 4 years and, he's got a 920 save percentage over the course of that time, and, if it goes against around two, he could really cash in if he's going for like a 4-year deal.
No, I agree. He bets on himself, and he's on a really good playoff team. And if he continues to play in the playoffs like he did last spring, and he does that after he's pretty good during the regular season, good to great, like he's going to get just a Brinks truck backed up to his house, because a playoff goalie that can play well in the playoffs and maintain performance for like 60 games during the regular season, 50 to 55 to 60, you're going to get top of the line money. And he'll be at a perfect time when, the salary cap is going up and like all these things are happening. And I think he really could cash in if he does some kind of bridge deal, but like still throw him the bone of him setting the market for like guys in his position where he gets the most you've ever gotten for somebody in that. Because just a few years ago, Saros, before he signed the deal he has now, he was 5 years, $15 million. And he was very similar to where Swayman is right now, as in terms of service, numbers put up, like all that stuff. He's a comparable, I think, his last contract, not this one he just signed. So if you give him significantly more than that, I think that's a win for all the goalies, and what Swayman was sort of talking about of like you're not taking less to make sure he does the goalies of the future a favor with the contract that he takes, and all the excellent NHLPA talk that he gave in that podcast interview. But I also agree, though, Fluto, I think they're going to struggle life post goalie hug for both Allmark and Swayman. I do think there's going to be an adjustment period for both of them. There's no question about it. We do have training camp starting next week. There's going to be, I believe it's Wednesday, they're going to do the testing and some of the medical stuff and, the annual pull-up thing that Zdeno Chara was always a master at back in the day, and usually set the tone for everybody else. And then we'll get right into training camp towards the end of the week. Steve, a thing or two that you're sort of curious about or what you're really going to be keying in on as we get going with training camp practices in the preseason?
Yeah, well, obviously there's the, there's the second line left wing competition. It's pretty clear that they really want Lysell to win that job and to be able to get, second line work on an entry level contract. That would be very helpful for them. A couple of things, how have these surgeries affected Brad Marchand? He's 36 now, and is he still a top 6 guy really on the championship team? At times he showed last year that he was, and he had ups and downs during the season. He had a long cold stretch. One of my favorite players to cover, ultra competitive, and he will go down with a fight. But he's getting up there, so it'll be interesting to see how he comes out of this. You know, he may miss the first day or two of training camp, but you know, he should be ready for the first game. But he needs to catch up on his conditioning. So that's an issue to keep an eye on. And the other one is just how do these defense pairs come together? We're all assuming that Zadorov is going to be matched with McAvoy, and I'm guessing that's the way it'll probably go. But you don't know until you get in. I remember a few years ago we all thought Taylor Hall was going to play with David Krejci and David Pasternak, and it just didn't work out that way. And the team was better for it that Hall played on the third line. So there's a couple of things for you.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the Marchand one, that just was like a lightning bolt when he just, by the way, I had 3 surgeries in the summer.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to skate or work out at all. That was kind of stunning when he mentioned that. And, he's a guy that whenever I've talked to Bruins trainers, Bruins staff, he's a guy that after the playoffs are over, he's back at Warrior skating and working out within days, usually after the season is over. And he's a guy that's in there quite a bit. And he's always been somebody that is very active in the summertime as far as skating, working out, keeping his conditioning and, and working towards the following season. So I think missing a huge chunk of the summer because of the surgeries that he had, I think that could have an effect on him. And certainly I think, the way that he plays, the age that he is, the mileage that are on the tires, I'm with you. I love him as a player and a person and a competitor. And I think he's been a ton of fun to watch, and he's still very, very good. But I think as he's hitting that age where I think there are going to be peaks and valleys consistency-wise during the regular season because it's such a long, rigorous season and it's so difficult. So I think watching him closely in preseason and then during the regular season, I think is something that you're going to have to do based on what happened this summer. Fluto, any things that you're really keying on in this training camp and preseason as we move into it, things that you're curious about or what you're going to be watching closely?
I'll be watching Patra. I think that's a interesting one in terms of, okay, first, the player himself, is he going to be 100% following major surgery? And what is ultimately best for the kid and for the team? As good as he was in camp last year, and he was good at the start, we've never really seen him be like a noticeable offensive NHL presence. And even when he went to juniors last year, he was banged up, obviously, with the shoulder, and he wasn't dominant then against and with teenagers. So would it be best for his confidence and for his production to just be, okay, here's 15 games down Prague, go be every situation's player? Then I think there's nothing wrong with that for him and for the team, but there's this interesting trickle down. Okay, what happens? Is Morgan Geekie your third line center behind Lindholm and Coyle? Do they do something with Zacha again and put him and Coyle as 2 and 2A behind Lindholm rather than have him left wing? Could this be Tyler Johnson? Does this open the door for him? So there's yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's different levels to that one depending on how, and if Matt tears it up, then maybe it's just no discussion and he'd be a good third line center. That's one. The other one I'm interested in is Hampus Lindholm. Like last year, there was a whole lot of red flags with that guy and that age. I think he's 30 now, big guy.
He took a lot of bad penalties last year.
It was completely different player last year versus 2 years ago. Yep. So can he stop that now and kind of refire, or is this the start of something? Because that's a lot of term left, and we saw 2 years ago when Charlie wasn't available at the start, he was so good in terms of 3-zone play. So if he can get back to some degree of that, that'll be terrific for that defense. But if it's more of last year, then you're like, oh man, this is the start of a concerning slide for him.
Looking for concert tickets for the rest of this summer or early fall? Last year, I used Game Time to get tickets to Def Leppard, Poison, Motley Crue, and Joan Jett at Fenway Park. And you can go out and get Fenway Park concert tickets this summer and this fall with Game Time. Pearl Jam's coming in September. I believe Post Malone is also coming to Fenway Park in September. So why not use Game Time to get your tickets for those concerts, in addition to the football action that you're going to have that's just starting up as well, that you can use Game Time to get Patriots tickets or any tickets to either NFL or college football all around. So it's fantastic using Game Time right now, taking the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. You can have all-in pricing, which is the feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, which is my favorite, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, again, but create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Yeah, and he's certainly at that age where you start to get concerned, and he's another one that's, logged a lot of hard, heavy minutes over the years, and maybe he's able to build off, making that play in Game 7 to Pasternak and sort of, turning things around a little bit there, and maybe that was a motivator to get him sort of back to where he needs to be if he's able to do it going into this season. But that is a huge key. There's no question about it, because they're expecting him to play big minutes and a huge role. The Patra one, I 100% agree. Like it's funny how, like, Bruins fans in particular, I think, are taking it as a foregone conclusion that he's the third line center on this team. And I really think it's, far from it until he shows that he would be able to do that, handle that kind of duty, and it being good for his development. I think the best thing for his development may be going down to the AHL for a while to start the year and sort of building back up to being that kind of player. And that would leave the Bruins maybe with a chance to put together, let's say, like a Trent Frederick, Morgan Geekie, Justin Brazeau third line that would be a huge, heavy, physical, puck possession, really lean on the other team sort of line that you could do a lot of interesting things with. I thought it was interesting that Jim Montgomery the other day, when we were asking him about, getting bigger, was talking about like creating more offense down low, and that's something that they were looking to do. And that's the kind of line where you might be able to get some of that if you had those players playing together. There is another interesting one as far as the goaltending goes. Joonas Korpisalo, obviously he's, played almost 300 games. He's established himself in the NHL. He's played for mostly bad teams, so that's a part of the factor with him. But he's obviously an NHL caliber and quality goaltender. And, he's got a lot of term and a lot of money on his contract after the Linus Ullmark deal. And I think you would pencil him in most likely as the backup to Jeremy Swayman. But, where does that leave Brandon Bussey, who, is going to have to go through waivers now? And do they risk losing him if there's a team out there that really needs goaltending at the beginning of the season, if push comes to shove? And is there any way that maybe you keep Bussey and put Korpisalo down there, especially if Bussey plays out of his mind in training camp and Korpisalo is simply okay? I'm going to be really interested to see how that, whole thing plays out, because I think Bussey's at a real interesting point in his career, Fluto, where like he's, I'm sure, waiting for that NHL shot. 26
years old and again, cheap, right? And so that works against the Bruins in one way, in the sense that he's not going to clear waivers if there's going to be a line of teams waiting to take that on. So, and on the flip side, Korpisalo, what is it? His AAV now is at 3 after retention, something like that. Nobody's going to take that. So, and we saw a couple of years ago, right? Like, it took a while for goalie Bob to get Linus to the point where he was a good NHL goalie. So maybe that could be in Jonas's future in terms of needing time with the coaches here to get straightened out. Granted, it's just regular preseason, pre-camp practice, but like I'm watching the guy, and there's a lot of rebounds coming off of Korpisalo, and he's super fast, he's athletic. But like I think it's going to take time for him to build up versus Bussey. He's huge, 6'5". He just stands there, and it's amazing to watch. Just he goes down, and he filled up so much of the net. So I don't know. The contracts of both guys is going to be a factor in terms of who is Jeremy's backup. I would not be surprised if Jonas goes down to prop.
No, and Steve, like Mujino was even saying it the other day, like he singled out Bussy as looking really good, like in great shape, like, you know, like all that stuff. Like he's ready to win a job. Like he's going to show up in camp with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, even if it's 50-50, if they play the exact same, Fluto just, explained the contract situation. Nobody's picking up Korpisalo, whereas Bussy probably will get snatched up. So that's a check mark in Bussy's favor. I thought he's been very good in preseason last year. They signed him the day they made the trade. They signed him for the short money extension. I thought, okay, they're making a move here. He's going to be the guy.
Right.
A couple hours later, they trade for Korpisalo in the Linus deal. So it's kind of a curious situation. I'm sure they had to take Korpisalo back to get that first round draft pick, but that's going to be an interesting competition. You're right, Joe.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the Bruins would gladly let anybody except Jonas Korpisalo and waivers if they were willing to take on that contract. In a perfect world, I think the Bruins would have Korpisalo sort of like regain a lot of his value by playing well as the backup and then flip him at some point. So they're not I think it's 4 years that he has coming at that cap figure. So they would love, I think, at some point for somebody to take him off their hands. If
and who knows? Maybe they both start in Boston, depending on how the Swayman negotiations go.
Fluto right now would love 3 goalies in Boston to start the season. I can say that with surety.
Could be 2.
A lot of goalie talk. Fluto, Steve, thank you very much for joining us.
You got it.
Everybody else out there, thanks for listening. We'll see you at the rink.